The rhythmic hum of the highway beneath my tires was usually calming. Today, it wasn't. I had left the teaching conference in Denver an hour earlier than expected. I was eager to get home, to surprise my kids, maybe take them for ice cream, just to see their faces light up. The sun was still high in the sky as I turned onto our quiet street. The house, a sleek two-story with large windows, stood there like it always had, familiar, warm, mine. I parked in the driveway and stepped out, stretching slightly from the long drive. As I walked toward the front door, I noticed something odd. The curtains in the living room shifted. A shadow moved behind them. My heart lifted slightly. I imagined Jaden and Sophie peeking out, thrilled to see me home early. But then I heard it. A voice. Hers. I took another step closer, instinctively slowing my movements. My wife's voice drifted through the slightly open window, hushed, urgent. Christian, just give it a few more months. Once he finishes paying off the loan, I'll file for divorce. By then, everything will be in my name. He won't even see it coming. I froze. My grip on my briefcase tightened until my knuckles went white. Silence. Then, a low chuckle. A man's voice. I still don't know why you're dragging this out, Lauren. We could be in Barcelona by summer. I need this done right, she whispered back. If I rush it, he'll fight back. But once I have everything set up, he won't have a leg to stand on. My stomach churned. My pulse pounded in my ears. I could have stormed in, demanded answers, screamed, thrown things, but I didn't. I took a slow step backward, then another. My entire world had just shattered, but I wasn't about to let them see me break. Instead, I turned, walked back to my car, and drove. Not far, just a few blocks, until I reached the overlook by the park where I used to take my kids on weekends. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there, staring at the city skyline in the distance. Lauren, the woman I had spent 10 years building a life with, was planning to rip everything from under me. And she thought I wouldn't fight back. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. My thumb hovered over her name for a second before I forced myself to move past it. Instead, I tapped on a different contact, Olivia Marsh, attorney at law. The phone rang twice before a clipped, professional voice answered. Marsh Law Firm. I cleared my throat, forcing my voice to remain calm. This is Ethan Caldwell. I need to schedule an appointment with Ms. Marsh. A pause. Then, earliest available slot is tomorrow morning at 7. Does that work? Yes. See you then. I hung up and stared out at the horizon, my mind already shifting into gear. Lauren thought she was in control, thought she had me wrapped around her finger, blind and clueless. But she had underestimated me. I wasn't just some gullible husband. She had declared war. She just didn't know it yet. That night, I went home as if nothing had changed. I walked through the front door and was greeted by the sound of cartoons from the TV. Sophie, my 6-year-old, came running toward me, her blonde curls bouncing. Daddy, she squealed, wrapping her little arms around my leg. I lifted her up, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Hey, princess, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil in my chest. How was your day? She launched into an animated story about a butterfly she had found on the playground, and I listened, nodding, keeping my expression relaxed. Lauren emerged from the kitchen, a glass of red wine in hand, her smile practiced and warm. You're home early, she said, walking toward me. How was the conference? I smiled back, playing the role of the devoted, unsuspecting husband. Good. Learned a lot. Just wanted to get home to my favorite people. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, and for the first time in our marriage, the touch of her lips made my skin crawl. I swallowed the disgust and smiled. Smells great. What's for dinner? Salmon with lemon butter sauce. She beamed, as if she weren't a woman plotting to destroy me. I nodded and walked past her, heading upstairs. The moment I was alone in my office, I locked the door, sat at my desk, and started planning. Step 1. Evidence. Step 2. Financial security. Step 3. Destroy them before they destroy me. I spent the rest of the evening going through the motions, dinner, bedtime routines, a few moments of meaningless small talk with Lauren before she retreated to our bedroom. I stayed in my office, pretending to grade papers, but my mind was already several steps ahead. If Lauren was planning to blindside me, I needed to be the one who struck first. The first step was evidence. I had no doubt that if she was willing to plot my financial ruin, she'd have no qualms about lying in court. I needed proof, not just of the affair, but of her intent. If I could document everything, I'd have leverage. I spent hours researching hidden camera setups and voice-activated recorders. By the time the clock read 3 a.m., I had a clear strategy in mind. The next day, before leaving for work, I carefully placed a small recording device behind a decorative vase in the living room, right in the same spot where I had overheard her plotting with Christian. Then, I planted another in the kitchen and one in our bedroom. This was war, and I wasn't about to fight blind. I met Olivia Marsh at her downtown office that morning. She was exactly the type of lawyer I needed, sharp, meticulous, and ruthless when necessary. "Mr. Caldwell," she greeted as I took a seat across from her desk. She wasted no time getting to business. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the conversation I overheard, the affair, Lauren's plan to take me for everything I had. I expected some reaction, shock, maybe even sympathy, but Olivia remained utterly composed. "Smart move not confronting her immediately," she said, tapping a pen against her legal pad. "That gives us time to build a strong case before she realizes she's lost control of the situation." "She's going to accuse me of domestic violence," I said. "I know it." Olivia's gaze darkened. "Then we need to get ahead of that, too. We'll document everything. If she so much as raises her voice at you, I want it recorded. If she sends any messages, save them." I nodded. "I've already started gathering evidence." "Good," she said. "Now, about your finances, do you have any joint accounts?" "Yes." "Then transfer your direct deposits into a separate account today. Leave just enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion. If she has access to your credit cards, freeze them immediately." I felt the weight of everything beginning to press down on me. I had spent years trusting Lauren, building a life with her, and now I had to prepare for battle against her. "This won't be easy," Olivia continued, "but if we do this right, you'll walk away with everything you deserve, including full custody of your children." Custody. That hit harder than I expected. I knew Lauren didn't care about Jaden and Sophie the way I did. They were accessories to her, the perfect family image she presented to the world. But the thought of her using them as pawns in a divorce? That sent a fresh wave of anger through me. "I want full custody," I said firmly. "She can't have them." Olivia nodded. "Then we'll make sure she doesn't." I went about my day like usual, pretending everything was fine. Lauren, oblivious, carried on with her charade, kissing me goodbye, texting me with meaningless updates, playing the devoted wife. That afternoon, I set up my laptop in my office and checked the recordings. It didn't take long before I found what I was looking for. Lauren and Christian were in the living room, their voices hushed but clear. "We need to start moving money soon," Christian was saying. "If he catches on, this could get messy." "He won't," Lauren assured him. "I know how to play him. He still trusts me." I clenched my jaw. "How soon can you file?" Christian asked. "After the loan is paid off," Lauren replied. "Then, I'll make my move." That was all the confirmation I needed. I copied the files to a secure external drive and locked it in my desk drawer. Step 1 was complete. Now, it was time to dismantle her plans piece by piece. The first real test came later that night. Lauren had a charity event to attend, which meant she was probably meeting Christian. I told her I had a late night at work and would be home late. Instead, I parked my car a few blocks away and walked back to the house. I didn't even have to wait long. A sleek black car pulled into the driveway. Christian stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit, carrying a bottle of wine. Lauren opened the front door, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. I watched from the shadows as they disappeared inside. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. This was what I needed. Solid proof. I pulled out my phone and began recording from the window. Inside, Christian poured 2 glasses of wine. My wine. Lauren leaned against the counter, her smile coy. "Just a little longer," she purred, taking a sip. "He's completely in the dark." Christian smirked. And once you get what you need? Lauren set her glass down and stepped closer to him, draping her arms around his neck. Then, he's out of the picture for good. My grip on my phone tightened. You have no idea, I thought. I had everything I needed. The next morning, I made my move. I transferred my paycheck to my private account, closed our shared credit cards, and updated my will. Then, I went to the kids' school and made sure I was the only authorized parent on their records. If Lauren tried to pull anything, she'd be blocked. At lunch, I met Olivia again. She watched as I handed her a flash drive. This is it, I said. Everything we need. She plugged it into her laptop, clicking through the files. After a moment, she smiled, a rare, satisfied expression. This is airtight, she said. We can take this to court. I exhaled, feeling the weight of weeks of betrayal and secrecy beginning to lift. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I was in control, and I wasn't going to lose. I woke before the alarm, the first dull rays of morning light creeping through the blinds. The house was silent except for Lauren's steady breathing beside me. I turned my head slightly, watching her. For 10 years, this was the face I woke up to. For 10 years, I had loved her. Even now, part of me wanted to reach out and brush a strand of hair from her cheek, like I used to in the early days. I would wake up before her, just to watch her sleep, to remind myself how lucky I was. Now I felt nothing but the cold weight of betrayal. I swallowed the lump in my throat, quietly slipping out of bed. My bare feet met the hardwood floor, but I felt no warmth from the home we had built together. Maybe that's because it wasn't really ours. It was hers. A stage where she had played the role of the perfect wife while planning to tear my world apart. The kitchen smelled like coffee when I walked in. Lauren was already at the counter, scrolling through her phone, wearing the same soft smile she always did in the mornings. For a second, my mind played a cruel trick on me. It told me everything was fine, that maybe last night had just been a bad dream, that my wife wasn't, in fact, plotting my downfall. But then she looked up and smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't spending her evenings in hotel rooms with another man, like she hadn't already planned how to leave me broken, and reality hit me like a gut punch. "Morning, babe," she said, standing on her toes to kiss my cheek. I let her, even though her touch felt foreign now. I stared at her, trying to understand how someone could lie so easily, how she could look me in the eyes and pretend. "Morning," I said, my voice steady. She leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee, completely unaware that I had spent half the night reviewing recordings of her whispering promises to another man, oblivious to the fact that I now had the power to ruin her, the way she had planned to ruin me. "So," she said, setting her mug down, "I was thinking, maybe we should start looking for a bigger house. A bigger house. A bigger prison." She was trying to trap me, to make sure I was financially committed before she made her move. I forced my expression to remain neutral. "That's a big step." She smiled. "I know, but it's for us. For the kids. Don't you think they deserve more space?" Us. The word made my stomach turn. There was no us anymore. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. "Yeah, I'll think about it." She beamed, satisfied. She had no idea that I saw right through her, and that was the only thing keeping me from breaking right then and there. After she left, I stayed at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. I used to love this house. I had painted the nursery walls myself before Jaden was born. I had carried Sophie upstairs when she fell asleep in my arms after bedtime stories. This wasn't just a house. It was supposed to be our home, and now it was nothing but a crime scene. A place where I had been lied to, where love had been nothing more than a well-rehearsed illusion. I exhaled shakily and picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over her contact name for a long moment. It used to be saved as Lauren. Now it was just Lauren. I scrolled past it, landing on another name. Kyle Beckett, my private investigator. I pressed the call button. "Got anything new?" I asked, my voice low. Kyle chuckled. "Oh yeah, you're gonna love this." Spoiler alert, I didn't love it. "She met Christian at a hotel last night," he continued. "Stayed for 3 hours. Checked out separately." I closed my eyes, pressing my thumb and forefinger against the bridge of my nose. I should have been numb to it by now, but it still hurt. I got photos, Cal said. A second later, my phone buzzed. I clicked on the image. Lauren, smiling up at him. Lauren, her hand resting on his chest. Lauren, walking into a hotel lobby with the man she had chosen over me. I felt something sharp in my chest, like a knife twisting between my ribs. How many times had she looked at me like that? How many times had she reached for my hand with that same touch, that same warmth? And had it ever been real? I let out a slow breath. I had my proof. Now, I had to use it. That night, Lauren came home late. I was sitting in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey, staring at the photos Kyle had sent. She walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. "Hey, babe," she said casually, shrugging off her coat. "Long day?" I took a sip of my drink, my pulse slow, steady. "Yeah, you?" She poured herself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Exhausting. That meeting ran way longer than I expected. Liar. I tilted my head, studying her. "Oh yeah? What was it about?" She hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. Then she recovered. "Just some fundraising logistics. Nothing exciting." I nodded, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "I see." For a moment, I wondered if she knew, if she could feel the shift in the air, if she could sense that her mask was beginning to crack. She smiled at me, but there was something behind her eyes, something uncertain. Good. She should be afraid, because tomorrow, I was going to destroy her perfect little world. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk, going over everything one last time. The photos, the recordings, the financial records. I had built an ironclad case. Tomorrow, Olivia would file the divorce papers. Tomorrow, I would take back my life. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing a hand over my face. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt powerful. But all I felt was tired. All I felt was loss. Because as much as I hated her for what she had done, as much as I wanted her to suffer, there was still a part of me that mourned the woman I thought she was, the life I thought we had. I closed my eyes for just a second, and then I let it go. Tomorrow, I would end this. And for the first time in a long time, I would be free. I stood there, watching her, waiting for some kind of reaction that would make this easier. I wanted her to fight, to scream, to throw something. Because anger, I could handle. But the way she just stood there, staring at the folder, her fingers trembling as she turned each page, made something in my chest twist painfully. She looked lost. For a second, I saw the woman I married, not the stranger I had discovered in secret phone calls and whispered betrayals. For a second, I thought maybe she might actually feel the weight of what she had done. Then she looked up at me, and I saw it in her eyes. Not remorse, not guilt, fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. My stomach clenched. I had spent years learning to read her. Her moods, her silences, the little shifts in her voice when she was upset. I could always tell when she was hurting. I just never imagined I'd be the one causing it. You did this," she whispered. I let out a slow breath, gripping the counter to steady myself. I had to. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her eyes darted back down to the papers, as if searching for a way out, as if she could flip to the last page and find a different ending. "Ethan," she murmured, her voice softer now. "You don't understand." I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "No, Lauren. I understand perfectly." Her lips parted, but she didn't say anything. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. "God, this hurt. I just need to know," I said, my voice quieter now. "Was it ever real?" She blinked, like she wasn't expecting the question, like it had never even occurred to her that I would ask it. I let out another breath, shaking my head. "I need to hear you say it. Did you ever love me?" She looked at me for a long time. Too long. Then she whispered, "I did. Once." A dull ache spread through my chest. I nodded, pressing my lips together. "Once," I echoed. She reached for me then, just a slight movement, her hand lifting from the counter, like maybe she thought she could still fix this. I stepped back. Her face crumpled for just a second before she caught herself. She inhaled sharply, blinking away tears. I had seen her cry before. Hundreds of times. But never like this. Never because of me. Ethan, she tried again. We don't have to do this. Please. We can talk? I shook my head, my throat tight. No, Lauren. You made this decision a long time ago. I'm just catching up. She flinched, her lips pressing together. For a moment, I thought she might fight back. I thought she might throw the papers in my face, scream at me, try to hurt me the way she already had. But she didn't. She just stood there, breathing hard, eyes searching mine for something that wasn't there anymore. Hope, forgiveness, love. I turned away before she could find nothing. I'll be in the guest room, I said over my shoulder. I walked upstairs, my footsteps heavy, my chest tight. I had thought this moment would bring relief, that finally exposing her, confronting her, would set me free. But the truth was, I was still mourning, not just for the marriage, but for the man I had been before I knew. I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, my hands clasped together, elbows resting on my knees. The dim light from the bedside lamp cast soft shadows across the walls, making the room feel even smaller than it was. I had spent years in this house, walking through its halls, building memories within its walls. And now, for the first time, I felt like a stranger here, like I was occupying space in a life that no longer belonged to me. I ran a hand down my face, sighing into the silence. This was it. Not just the end of our marriage, but the end of the illusion I had been holding onto for far too long. A soft knock at the door. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I knew it was her. For a brief second, I considered ignoring it, letting her stand there, waiting, feeling the weight of everything the way I had been feeling it for months. But some part of me, the part that still remembered loving her, stood and opened the door. Lauren stood there, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Her face was bare, no makeup, her hair a little messy, eyes red-rimmed. She had been crying, and for a horrible, aching moment, I wanted to reach for her. Not to pull her close, not to forgive her, just to comfort her. Because once upon a time, that was my instinct. My job. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked past me, standing in the middle of the room like she didn't know where to go. Her eyes flicked around, landing on the neatly made bed, the packed bag by the dresser. You're leaving? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I rubbed the back of my neck, just for a little while. She nodded slowly, staring at the floor. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she spoke. I don't want it to end like this. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. Lauren, it ended a long time ago. She flinched, like I had hit her. I shouldn't care. But God, a part of me still hated seeing her in pain. Ethan, she whispered, stepping closer, her voice shaking. I shook my head. Don't. She stopped. Whatever she was about to say, a lie, an excuse, a half-hearted apology, I didn't want it. I met her gaze, my throat tightening. I just need to know one thing. She swallowed hard. What? Was any of it real? Her breath caught, her lips pressing together. I took a step back, creating space between us. I need to hear you say it, Lauren. Did you ever really love me? She blinked rapidly, eyes shining, and for a second, I thought she might finally be honest. Then she whispered, I did. A lump formed in my throat. I did. Past tense. I exhaled, nodding. That was all I needed to hear. She took another step closer, reaching out slightly. Ethan, I stepped back again. No, Lauren. You don't get to do this. She bit her lip, looking away. I never meant to hurt you. I let out another soft, bitter laugh. You didn't mean to get caught. Silence. She didn't deny it. And that was the final piece I needed. I nodded toward the door. You should go. She looked at me one last time, like she was searching for something. One last chance, one last thread to hold on to. But I had nothing left to give her. Good night, Ethan, she whispered. Goodbye, Lauren. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me. This house. Our house. I thought about the first time we walked through it, hand in hand, dreaming about the future we'd build here. I thought about the nights we spent curled up on the couch, whispering about baby names, about growing old together, about everything we thought would last. I thought about how easily it all fell apart. And then, I thought about Jaden and Sophie. How much of this would they understand? How much of it would hurt them? I closed my eyes, pressing the heels of my hands against them, trying to push back the ache in my chest. I had already lost my wife. I could not lose my children. That was the only thing that mattered now. Morning came too soon. I packed the last of my things, moving slowly, methodically. Every movement felt final, even though I knew I wasn't leaving yet. But things were changing. I could feel it in the air. When I walked downstairs, the house was silent. Lauren was gone. For a brief moment, my stomach twisted. Had she taken the kids? But their backpacks were still by the door. Their shoes still lined up neatly in the hallway. She hadn't taken them. She had just left. I wasn't sure what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I grabbed my keys, stepping outside. The early morning air was crisp, the sky painted in soft oranges and blues. I closed my eyes, breathing it in. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Maybe not fully. Maybe not yet. But one day, I would be okay. I stood on the porch, the cold air biting at my skin, watching the sun rise over the quiet street. It felt surreal. For the first time in years, I woke up alone. Not just physically, but in a way that ran so much deeper. Lauren was gone. Not just in the sense that she had left the house last night. She had been gone for a long time. I just hadn't been willing to see it. I ran a hand over my face, my breath visible in the crisp morning air. My chest felt heavy, like there was a weight pressing down on me, one I had been carrying for far too long. I stepped back inside, locking the door behind me. The silence in the house was deafening. It wasn't the comforting kind of quiet, the kind you settle into when everything is okay. It was the kind of quiet that came after a storm, when the world was left in ruins, and all you could do was stand there and stare at the wreckage. I made my way to the kitchen, moving on autopilot. Coffee. I needed coffee. I reached for a mug out of habit. And then I noticed it. Lauren's favorite mug, the white one with the tiny chip on the handle, was missing. My fingers hesitated on the cabinet door. She had taken her cup. I didn't know why that small detail hit me so hard, but suddenly, my throat felt tight. She had taken a cup. She had left me. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. It was stupid to fixate on something so insignificant, but I knew it wasn't really about the mug. It was about the fact that she had been leaving in pieces, one conversation at a time, one lie at a time, one secret at a time. And now, she was gone. I heard the soft creak of the stairs before I saw them. Jaden shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Dad?" I turned, forcing myself to smile. "Hey, buddy." He yawned. "Where's Mom?" I set my coffee down. My stomach clenched. How much should I tell him? "She had to go somewhere early," I said gently. "She'll be back later." It wasn't exactly a lie, but the truth was too heavy for his 8-year-old heart. He frowned slightly but didn't press. "Can we have pancakes?" I let out a quiet chuckle. "Yeah, of course, kiddo." A few minutes later, Sophie patted in, her stuffed bunny clutched against her chest. "Daddy, I had a dream about a big castle." I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah? Were you the princess?" She nodded, eyes bright. "And you were the king." I swallowed past the lump in my throat and kissed her forehead. "That's a pretty good dream, sweetheart." For the next half hour, I focused only on them, pouring syrup, cutting pancakes into small bites, listening to Jaden ramble about superheroes while Sophie showed me her latest crayon masterpiece. It felt normal. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was drowning. And maybe that was the saddest part, that it took Lauren leaving for me to realize how much of myself I had lost. By mid-morning, I was sitting in Olivia's office again. She didn't waste time with small talk. She folded her hands on her desk, her sharp eyes studying me. "She left," I said, my voice flat. She nodded, as if she expected it. "Do you think she's coming back?" I let out a slow breath. "I don't know." "She will," Olivia said. At least she'll try. I frowned. Why? Because right now, she's in shock. You took control before she could. She wasn't expecting that. I thought about the way Lauren had looked at me last night, the disbelief in her eyes, the fear. Fear of losing me? No, fear of losing control. She's going to come back, Olivia continued, and she's going to try to convince you that this was all a mistake, that she regrets it, that she wants to fix things. My stomach twisted. What if she does? I asked quietly. Olivia studied me. Would you take her back? The answer should have been obvious. And once, it wouldn't have been. Once, I might have let her wrap her arms around me, whisper apologies, beg me to try again. But I had seen too much. Heard her voice whispering to another man. Watched her smile at someone else the way she used to smile at me. I wasn't that man anymore. I wasn't a fool. No, I said firmly. I won't. Olivia nodded approvingly and slid a folder toward me. This is it, she said. Custody filings. Asset division. Everything we discussed. I stared at the papers for a long moment. Once I signed, that was it. No more maybe. No more what if. No more waiting for an apology. I picked up the pen, and I signed. 2 days later, Lauren came back. I knew she would. She walked in quietly, her posture hesitant, like she knew she no longer belonged here. She found me in the living room, sitting on the couch with an old photo album Sophie had pulled from the shelf. She paused in the doorway, watching me. Ethan. I turned the page slowly, my fingers brushing over a photo of us from years ago. Before the kids, before the house, before everything had fallen apart. I looked up, meeting her eyes. I filed the papers, I said. Her breath caught. She took a slow step forward. Ethan, can we just talk? I shook my head. No, Lauren, I said quietly but firmly. We can't. She looked down at her hands, swallowing hard. She already knew this was over. She just didn't want to admit it. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I exhaled, shaking my head. You didn't mean to get caught. Her lips pressed together, and I saw the moment she realized she had nothing left to say. I nodded toward the door. It's time for you to go. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. She wiped at her eyes quickly, then turned toward the door. She paused, fingers on the handle. Goodbye, Ethan. I looked at her one last time, and finally, I said the words I never thought I'd be able to say. Goodbye, Lauren. The door shut softly behind her, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was over, and for the first time in years, I was free.